I would say good morning. It's 8 in the morning where I am. I am in Ram Dass's study in Hawaii, and I want to just share a few of his teachings with you this morning, as well as as well as some more. And but I also want you to get to see where I am. So this is, I don't know if you can see in the picture, but where I'm pointing is to Ram Dass's teacher, his guru, Neem Karoli Baba. They called him Maharaji, and there's just pictures of him all over. There's one in front of me, one to the side of me, several. To this side, there's pictures all over, from the kitchen counter to everywhere, everywhere. Just to remind, it's a reminder to be present. And then right here where I'm pointing, you can see there's a little bit of a plaid blanket that's like his guru's tucket. It's actually a massage table where Ram Dass used to get massages, and then on it are some fruits and flowers. He passed away 3 years ago, almost exactly, December. I don't know if it was the 19th, the 20th, somewhere around there, 22nd, somewhere around there, in 2019, right before the pandemic. And this table is where he was laid out after he passed away, and people could visit his body, and it's still every day since then decorated with fruits and flowers for the last 3 years. And so I'll offer you some of his teachings later, and also behind me is his chair, and the portrait of him is sitting on his chair. The blanket covers the bottom of the chair, and the portrait with the turquoise shirt where I'm pointing with my thumb is Ram Dass, and that chair is where he spent much of the time. And he could look out the window and see, maybe I can show you out the window. I'm kind of plugged into things here, but um, I'd love to show you what he would look at. I think I can do it. I don't know if you can see. Can you see? There's a papaya tree, and then in the distance, there's the ocean with white caps. And he would just sit and look at the sky and the clouds. And he loved the clouds. And we got him a membership to the Cloud Appreciation Society. I don't know if any of you are aware of the Cloud Appreciation Society. It costs $15 a year to join if you're interested in clouds. So my name is Trudy, and I'm the founding teacher at InsightLA. And here in Maui, I'm on the unceded land of the indigenous Hawaiian people, their A'aina, and it was theirs until the late 19th century, when their queen was captured and put in prison in her own palace by American forces that took over their land and their island. And so I always begin, or try to remember to begin, with a land acknowledgement of the indigenous people wherever we are, who tended this land and lived off this land for thousands of years before um, before Americans got here. I guess it started with Captain Cook, but Captain Cook left and we never did. So for those of you who may be new to this group, we divide it roughly into thirds. We're going to meditate now, and then we have some teaching, and then some conversation together. And I am going to tell a little bit about Ram Dass, just because he was a seminal figure in my generation and really changed the spiritual landscape of our country, and maybe of the West in some ways. So and he did love Buddhist meditation. So let's meditate together. Please find a comfortable frame for your body where you can, where you can sit for roughly 30 minutes, roughly, give or take 5. And it's really an honor to be with all of you today. I just respect so much people who make time to be quiet, to be present, make time for your spirit, for this this mini this little chip of of retreat that we do on Sundays. Um, yeah. And this morning I want to do a little bit of a welcome meditation that comes from the centering prayer, the Christian meditation tradition, because I was teaching one of their groups the last couple days. So I actually don't have a bell, so we just begin by taking 3 deep cleansing breaths, breathing deeply and intentionally in, and breathing out. Once again, breathing in and releasing, relaxing with the out breath. And taking one more deep breath in. So tuning in to the sensations in your body, noticing the sensations associated with the movement of the breath in the body. And then focusing the attention on your preferred subject of meditation. It may be the breath in the body. It may be a kind of loving kindness or compassion meditation. But mostly we sit together in silence, allowing your breath to flow in and out in its own natural rhythm. And this is the meditation that Ram Dass taught. You can use it or not as you wish, to just gently repeat to yourself in the quiet, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. And when you notice that you're engaged with your thoughts about the past or the future, just gently remind yourself, I am loving awareness. Then you can drop the I am, and it's just loving awareness, loving awareness. And each time you bring your attention back to this present moment, just being here, each time you're aware that your attention has wandered, and instead of reproaching yourself, just understand this is the nature of the thinking mind. It wanders around into the past, into the future, commenting about now. And with some tenderness and understanding, some kindness toward your mind. This is loving awareness. And allowing yourself to just sink in to whatever you're experiencing in this very moment with loving awareness. welcoming whatever you're experiencing. Welcoming whatever is happening into your loving awareness. The awareness is big enough to hold it all. Whatever feelings or thoughts are there, so that you can just be the way you are, right here, right now, not having to change anything. Just being present with however it is for you in this particular moment of all eternity. And who you are, who I am, who we are together is loving awareness. And whatever difficulties or suffering may be present, we just be with it fully in meditation, allowing the emotion or the difficulty itself to be embraced with kind awareness. Ding! And gently opening your eyes, turning on your camera if you're willing, so I can see you. Just a little extra joy to be able to see you. Thank you. Not necessary, but it is a pleasure. So I want to share with you some of the teachings of Ram Dass this morning, since I am here in his study. And it's amazing because 3 years later, 3 years after he passed away, there is still a palpable sense of stillness, very loving stillness in this room. And the house where he lived, uh, it's owned by Dr. Raj, a cardiologist in Florida, but the household pays the mortgage. And there are 8 young people living here with Dasima, Ram Dass's companion, for she took care of him for, I guess, 15 years, uh, maybe longer. Anyway, Ram Dass was gay, so this was not a romantic relationship, but a very, very intimate. She did his intimate care, and every day, day in, day out, she took care of him. And once a year, she would take 2 or 3 days off, but she didn't like to do that because she always felt that the care, as willing and lovely as other people were, that she gave him the best care. And she's here, and he actually transmitted some of um, his his darshan, his transmission of loving awareness to her, and she is the ma of the household. And so she's my age, she's 78, and she's a few months younger than I am. And she's living with these 8 young people, and they do their spiritual practice every day. They meditate, they do some Hindu practices like arti and chanting Hanuman Chalisas, um, a lot of song and prayer, like it's called kirtan. They're having that this afternoon. And so the wider community comes on Sunday for kirtan, on Tuesday for the Hanuman Chalisas, on Thursday for meditation. There's in addition to their practice. So it's a little ashram here now. And why am I talking about Ram Dass and these Hindu practices? Because he actually loved Buddhist meditation. And his teacher, Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji, would tell them to go sit, to go meditate, to go sit Vipassana retreats in India. I think maybe one of the people who was there with him, Raghu, said, I think he just got sick of us and he would send us all off into retreat to get rid of the Westerners for a while because we were such pests. And so, but he also wanted them to learn to meditate and to focus. And even today, why I'm here is because each year we used to teach a retreat with Ram Dass and some other teachers. And 3 times, I don't know how long it will be able to continue, but 3 times we've had the Ram Dass Legacy Retreat, where some of the people who used to teach with him and some of the people who were with him, with Maharaji in the early days, come together. And it's not a retreat the way that I think of a retreat, which is silent. People talk and they do a lot. Krishna Das is a musician who has a band and they sing prayers and they do that for 2 hours every evening. Um, there's delicious food. It's in Hawaii. It's called opening your heart in paradise, but we also call it opening your wallet in paradise because it's expensive to come here and do that. Um, but it is a beautiful gathering, and that is why I'm here. And Ram Dass always invited Sharon Salzberg or me, or he always invited meditation teachers. Jack has been coming with me for the last many years. I think I don't know how many years we've done this, 12 or maybe 12. Anyway, he always wanted to have meditation teachers there because his practice of meditating with loving awareness that he sort of invented is not the primary practice of the Hindu tradition. It's mostly chanting these prayers. And of course, yes, meditating also, but not so many instructions for that meditation. So uh, Ram Dass would always say that Maharaji was the fisherman, and of course, we're the fish, right? And that he was the worm. He was the one who he was the bait that would catch us and bring us to the teaching. And really, the teaching is very simple. The teaching is to love, to serve, and to remember, to love each other, to love everything, actually, was Ram Dass's practice. And he used to have on the wall, I've noticed they've changed it because it wasn't very pretty. One time here at the house, this filmmaker, Mickey Lemley, was visiting, and there was, and Ram Dass was talking about loving everything, and there was this kind of icky stain on the rug. And Mickey said, well, do you love that stain on the rug? And and Ram Dass said, yes, that stain on the rug and I are not separate. I love that stain on the rug. So I guess they replaced the rug and he framed that stain. There was this framed picture of that stain on the rug as just a symbol of finding a way not to push anything out of our hearts. And I'll talk a little more about that afterwards. But, I fell in love with the worm. I never knew Maharaji. I had some visions in my meditation, but I wouldn't say, that I was, uh, drawn to him as a teacher. I didn't know him, and uh, but I feel like when I look at the influence that his teachings have had on the Western world and certainly on us as a younger generation, but there's another generation. As I said, there's 8 young people here in the house taking care of the house and serving. Because the idea isn't just to love yourself and love everything, it's to love it so much that you want to support it, that you want to, get off your meditation cushion and do something to be of help in the world. And Ram Dass had a big stroke when he was, and I have to confess, when he was young. Um, his name was Richard Alpert. He was a professor at Harvard. How many of you don't know anything about Ram Dass? Is there anyone here? Um, Okay, then I don't have to go into all of the history of it. But Ram Dass wrote a wonderful book with Paul Gorman called How Can I Help? And I think they're actually in Japan right now, some people making a movie out of one of the stories in that book, How Can I Help? But then when Ram Dass had his big stroke and became completely half paralyzed and spent the last 95, well, from 1995 until he died in 2019, in a wheelchair, he said, now he should write a book called How Can You Help Me? He had to completely let go of being this powerful spiritual teacher, famous and writing all these books, and to becoming somebody who couldn't even, go to the toilet by himself, who needed help with every single thing that he did. And a couple of the young people here are young men who were his caretakers. He had to have two, because to lift him out of the wheelchair, to do the transfers from the wheelchair to the bed and so on, required two people. But Maharaji told Ram Dass to take teachings wherever he could find them. He was very inclusive, embracing, eclectic, and and I feel like all of you are probably doing that in your lives, because we have access to so many teachings now. Unlike when I was young and we had, 3 or 4 Dharma books, you could fit them all on one shelf, this wide. And now, it's just, you could fill a library, right? It's wonderful. Um, but you use your own heart, your own discernment to see which ones feel most helpful to you and feel most attuned to where you are and what you need at any given time, and which ones might be irrelevant, maybe even harmful, but mostly they might not be relevant to you. And when somebody would visit Ram Dass, his first question would always be, what is your sadhana? Which means, what is your practice? What is your spiritual practice that you do? And um, in our practices, they help us keep our balance between our doing, our thinking, our work in the world, all between all the things that we are active in doing in our everyday lives. And then they help us rediscover and stay connected to that balance with the formless stillness, um, the timeless sense of being that holds all the simple joy of just being alive, the simple joy that we feel. Um, and this balance between doing and being, well, that's the dance that we're doing, right? Every day of our lives, trying to remember to just to be human beings and not just human doings. And and our practice, it's the meditation that we do, it's the study and listening to teachings that we do, um, it's any service work that we do, and it's spending time in spiritual community. We say sangha, in his tradition they say satsang, but that sense of spending time together and supporting each other in our sadhana, in our practice, that is really important. And as you know, it's one of the 3 refuges. It's not less than the refuge of Buddha, Dharma. Sangha is right up there. Um, and and so those 3 refuges really encapsulate Ram Dass's teaching too, of service, of devotion, of community, of study. And excuse me. And he taught that service is a path to awakening. And there are so many ways to serve. If you have, one of the things that happened during this retreat, Annie Lamott was there, and she had a 12-step meeting in her room every night. And what was great about this meeting is that it included people who identified as alcoholics, people who were in Al-Anon, people who were in Overeaters Anonymous. It was for anybody in a 12-step program. And so it was very moving, actually, because it was such an open meeting. I mean, there are open AA meetings where you can join if you just want. I used to go to them just to develop compassion for my husband. Um, but this was just open to all 12-step people. And um, there's so many ways to serve. If you've been to meetings like that, just setting up the chairs, offering people tea or coffee. Coffee's a big thing at those meetings. Um, these are all ways to serve, and I'm mentioning this because here in the house, they serve meals to 60 unhoused people. Of course, now since the fires, there are many, many, many more. But before the fires, there was this community of about 60 unhoused people. That's a lot of people to feed twice a week, and that's part of their seva or service that they do in this house. But it doesn't have to be some huge thing like making big pots of food for big amounts of people. Like I said, it can be making a cup of tea or coffee or setting up chairs at a meeting. Just very simple things. So I feel Ram Dass's legacy unfolding in real time, not just at that retreat, but certainly here at the household. And I would say in all of us who love spiritual practice, how many of you have read the book Be Here Now? I was just looking at this book again. It was so important to us in the 70s. I don't know if you ever read this book, but if you haven't read this book, it's dated in its language, talks about getting high and things like that. High from spiritual practice, of course. Um, but it's dated, but it's fantastic. It's still a great book of spiritual teachings. And I opened it this morning when I was thinking about, what I would share with you this morning. And um, I found something that I actually do want to read to you. But first, I want to continue because the other thing that they do here is they've raised money to order air purifiers that they've taken to people in Lahaina, because that where the fires were, and we had to drive past that place on our way to the retreat. It was like driving through a graveyard. You just see the houses leveled to ash with just some concrete standing, and it's very, very toxic. One of the young people in the house here who was delivering the ventilators and air purifiers to people in the vicinity, obviously nobody's living in the ash, that he said that just being there he was sick for a couple of days. So they're discovering Ram Dass's legacy through these activities that they're doing, the expression of who they are today, and it's a beautiful thing. And Ram Dass taught that we're all we're souls in a pod together. We're in this soul pod together. We could call it our sangha. He called it a soul pod. He said, you are a soul going through an incarnation, receiving exactly what you need for your spiritual evolution. Spiritual practice reduces our reactivity. And I think, we've all had experiences of that in our lives. So we see that's true. It reduces our reactivity. And the more spiritual practice we do, the less time it takes to remember that we are souls. Now, we don't use the word soul in Buddhist practice, and we don't use the word God, because these are like personified ways of understanding awareness or loving awareness. Ram Dass coined that phrase, and Jack and I have been using it ever since, because it really felt like a beautiful way to express the spirit of what we connect with in our practice. All of these practices are paths to, we could say God, we could say spirit, universe. Annie Lamott says Gus. That's what she calls God. And I forget what it stands for, something of universal service, the God of universal service or something like that. And from the Bhagavad Gita, by whatever path, of course it says men, Now, we've discovered in the last 100 years that women are also people. So we're going to say people, not just women, but people of all identifications, gender, race, color, age, class, abilities, by whatever path people love me, says Krishna to Arjuna, by that path they come to me. Many are the paths, but they all in the end come to me. Or as Ram Dass said, there's this little card here I'll show you what I'm looking at next to the computer. This is a picture of his guru in his blanket. And it says, all religions are the same. They all lead to God. God is everybody. Which means now you're looking at Neem Karoli Baba as me. But he would say, we're the same. I don't really feel the same as him. Because if you've read stories of his miracles and things, anyway, I don't feel the same. But intellectually, okay, I can accept we're the same. But this is what I want to read you from Be Here Now. Excuse me. It feels really relevant to what's happening in our world in America that has been triggered by the war, Israel and Gaza. And I was reading an article yesterday about university professors that are being asked to resign because they didn't say exactly the right thing, or they didn't say it loud enough, or they didn't say it clear enough for who. I mean, it said, I said to Jack, this is like, you're too young to remember Joseph McCarthy, but there was a witch hunt that was really horrible in our country in the 50s. Anyway, he's talking about protesting. I just opened to this morning, and he said, and he's talking about nonviolence, of course, and he said, remember, this is from the early 70s. He said, let's consider an example of the relation of a group called hippies and a group called police. This was happening in our day. If a confrontation occurs during a protest, what is the result? If the hippies see the police only as them, and the police see the hippies only as them, then the result is an increase in polarization and distance between the two. Each group returns to its headquarters and plans an increase in its own strength to overcome them. And why does that distance increase? Because nobody wants to be them. Everybody wants to be us. And if you meet someone who sees you as them or one of them, and we've all had this experience since 2016, if you meet someone who sees you as one of them, that meeting arouses in you all of he says paranoia, I would say resistance or reactivity. And you in turn see the other person as them. In other words, distance. And these cycles get worse and worse until there's some violent confrontation, which we've also been witnessing. And then he talks about finding a conscious alternative to this. And he said it's not to avoid protests or confrontations. It's for the participants to become more aware, more conscious. And what that means is that we understand that beneath all of our differences of opinion that we have right here in this group, for sure, beneath all of our differences of opinion, we understand that the same blood flows through us all, that all the arms, legs, heart, it's the same, that we understand our common humanity underneath all the differences of our identifications. And then protest can just be understood as, he calls it a form of social communication, and how beautiful that is, that it's a communication between us. It involves our differences. And he says, the simple rule of conscious participation in a protest is this: you may protest if you love the person you're protesting against as much as you love yourself. How's that? I want that emblazoned on all the college campuses. Yes, protest for what you believe in. Do it. But understand, we're not each other's enemies. We're just not. Um, you may disagree with all their values, but behind all of them, he says, here we are, manifestations of spirit, manifestations of life. You can call it God, you can call it the life of all worlds, you can call it spirit, but that aliveness, it's us. Life in the form of you, life in the form of me. Here we are. And then he talks about, you know, going to help refugees, doing, bigger um, instances of helping that involve a lot more effort and time and offering of your life. And he says, sure, go do it. But again, it comes back to this koan that my Zen teacher Koben gave me when I was working with severely dysregulated kids, little kids and bigger kids, um, and it was hard. I was young, and it was hard. It was hard work. I could never have done it without my meditation practice. It was so heartbreaking. And I remember asking, because we saw at those times, we saw our Asian meditation teachers as the holders of all wisdom about everything. We did not see them as, ordinary humans, which of course in many ways they were not, but it's kind of like Albert Einstein. People used to write to him with questions about their marriages and how to raise their kids. And, he was he was not omniscient. He was a brilliant person, but brilliant scientist, but he was not omniscient. Anyway, I, in my naivete, and I was asking my teacher, how can I help these children? He was not a special needs teacher, but I thought he would know everything. But he gave me a wonderful koan. He said, and I've shared this with some of you before, he said, no idea of helping. So I had to chew on that one for a while, but I came to understand that what he meant was, no idea of me, the giver goddess of help over here, and you, the poor person I'm helping over there, right? No sense of that kind of separation. And Ram Dass put it like this. This is a very old book, the original edition. He said, what about helping suffering, starving people, stuff like that? He said, sure, do it. It's karma yoga, but do it without attachment. To be attached means that you identify with your role as the giver of help, which of course casts the other person in the role of receiver of help. And that actually increases human distance. A conscious being knows there's neither giver nor receiver. There are only empty bellies and storehouses of wheat, and the effort required to move the wheat from the storehouses to the belly. It's our wheat, our belly, our effort. And when all this energy has been transferred, a conscious being realizes that nothing has happened. Thanks are observed. Does your left hand thank your right hand? So we meditate. That's our form of prayer. In the retreat, people sang their prayers. Some people danced their prayers. Whatever path resonates for you. Remember, by whatever path people love me, says God, by that path they come to me. Many are the paths, but they all in the end come to me. So all these practices are really different paths up the same mountain, right? And, part of doing retreat is connecting with our own beautiful hearts and realizing that we're all in this together in this life. And that's what we do here on Sundays as well, in our little microchip of retreat that we have together. So these are the teachings that I want to share with you this morning.